I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land throughout Australia and recognise the continuing connection to country, water, and the community in which we live in. I'm your host, Fiona, and I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome you back to Beyond Sport with Fiona Stewart. As a keen believer in the transformative power of sport, I'm excited to dive into conversations with individuals from all corners of the sporting world, whether it's your neighbourhood coach, a childhood hero, or a current sporting sensation. This podcast is your ticket to explore the incredible stories behind the game. Join me on this journey where sport transcends mere competition and becomes a force for positive change and personal growth. And hey, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that follow button wherever you are listening so you never miss the drop of a new episode. Trust me, you don't want to miss the inspiring stories I have in store for you. Let's dive in. Today, we're revving up our engines and diving into the adrenaline-fueled world of drag racing with none other than Liam McDonald. From the tender age of 8, Liam has been burning rubber on the track, carving his path in the junior side of bracket racing. Join us as Liam shares his journey from his early days behind the wheel to his impressive achievements, including winning the British Championship title and competing across Europe. But it's not just about the wins. Liam opens up about the sacrifices his family made to fuel his racing dreams and the importance of community in the racing world. So strap in and get ready for the ride as we delve into the world of drag racing with Liam McDonald. Hello, Liam. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. And you're up a little bit late tonight and I'm up early.
Yeah. Opposite sides of the world.
But it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I would like to know a little bit about your sport and how you got into it.
So basically, I'm involved heavily in drag racing. And one thing about drag racing that a lot of people don't know, it's not exactly first to the finish line. There's also a side to it called bracket racing. And that's where I come in. I race in the junior side of that. So it's the under 18s and mainly from 8 years old till 18. I started all because of my sister. My sister, obviously, you kind of want to follow your older sibling. So I seen her doing it. And of course, the sibling reaction is, I want to do better. It's rivalries. It's always in the family. So I started that at 8. Didn't really succeed until I was about 12, 13. And then, of course, COVID happens. Everyone's in lockdown 2-3 years. I came back 2 seasons ago, only for half the season. Then last year, that's when I got most of my success. And yeah, since then, it's kind of just been building up from then. Just a little few things about drag racing and my side of drag racing. Within bracket racing, it's not done first to the finish line. It's actually like giving a time slot and you have to get as close to that as possible. So for me, I'm aiming to get around 7.9 seconds as a finish line time. And if you go quicker than that, you get called a breakout. So a breakout is too fast and you're kind of like in that zone of you're no longer in the kid speeds. You're technically playing a game at the top end where you're on the throttle, off the throttle, just placing your car milliseconds in front of their car. And it comes down to inches at the finish line. I've recorded wins by 4 inches and I've recorded wins by feet. It's so variant on the day, by the weather. You get affected by everything. And if it rains, you're sat in your car for 2-3 hours because, of course, you can't race on slick tires on the wet, prepped. So it's crazy what happens in the European tracks compared to the Americans where they have the much more higher end. But yeah,
in terms of
that's basically an overlay.
The window that you have to hit, is that because you're in the junior category? Or is that also like an open?
Oh, well, yeah, it's fully open. So with the car racing itself, with the car classes, it's split into 3 from 8 to 18. There's 1190 for 8 to 10. 10 to 13, you can go 890. And then with 13 to 18, you go 790. So 790 seconds. These are all seconds. And then with these, you can go from 14 seconds to 790 seconds. You don't have to go 790 seconds. You can give a time of whatever it may be once it's slower than 7.9 seconds. So if your car isn't the same as someone else, you have the same equal chances of winning because you'll get a handicap on the start line. So you'll technically start how much of a difference beforehand, and that other person has to try catch you. And basically, if that reaction times are good enough, then you will catch them. If you're not good enough, you won't catch them and they'll win. But of course, then it falls into if one person goes too quick, then you have a thing called the breakout. Yeah. And that breakout is really confusing for people that don't have a clue what drag racing is, but I can walk through it just quickly. It's too fast by milliseconds, then you're in a breakout. And whoever has the smallest breakout, or whoever doesn't break out, is the winner. And then if both people don't break out, it's done a reaction time, like your reaction time plus the difference in your top line from your time. So if I ran 8 seconds and you ran 790 seconds, but I had a better reaction time, I could still win. So it's done on multiple different factors that like kind of mathematically add together.
Very intricate. How do you control that?
It is. Well, it's really hard to like fully control it. A lot of it is down to training your reaction times. And once you have good reaction times, you can then bring that across to your top line, your top of the track, kind of like how to play it. So there is a thing called pedaling in my class, and it's basically on and off the throttle to basically plant your car at the top end, like millimeters in front of them. And if you do it wrong, the other car goes past you, you lose the race because you took too much time off your initial, what you wanted to. And, or you could do it perfectly and you could actually slow yourself down enough to go exactly on your time. But that's like the real advanced side of it. Yeah, it's really advanced to it. But there is, of course, the people that are kind of not as advanced in it and they just go, I'm going to go 8 seconds, and they could run 9.4 seconds. They don't care. They just want to be there, and everyone has a good time afterwards. So no one really minds. So it does get competitive, but yeah.
In terms of how you train your reaction time, I grew up a competitive swimmer. So in like our sprint races, the time off the block, our reaction time, that was part of our race too. How did you train yours?
So mine was really just down to doing it over and over again there's an app that you can just finger on, finger off, and just seeing how your body reacts to the lights coming down, finding different like strategies. A lot of the younger kids, which we always laugh at, they go like 3, 2, 1, go. And you're like, it's going to be very hard to do that when you're sitting in the car about to race. You just have to, all these pressures are on you, especially at their age. So you kind of have to just find, what I tend to do is I hyper focus the third bulb on a 4 bulb tree, which is what we use for the start line. And it comes down in stagger. So it goes top bulb, second bulb, third bulb, and the fourth one is either green or it's red. Red is you went too early. It's like a false start in a sprint. Or green, which is, of course, you're fine. It's a green light race. So basically, I focus on the third yellow, which is just before the go, for like the last cautionary before the go. And it's a very hard technique to learn, but when you master it and you have it down, you can kind of like bang out the same reaction time over and over again because you're looking for a certain point in the light. Because when you're hyper focused in this light, you can actually see the light switch on and then actually close it back off. And for me personally, I'm aiming for that middle to closing. And once I see the closing, I'm on the throttle, I'm gone. And I've actually recorded some of the times that you never really see in European racing, which is the average is 0.1 of a second, which is like a blink. If you think about blinking, that's 0.1 of a second roughly. Whereas my best reaction times have been 0.000014, which is 1/100,000th of a second. And of course, you can't even fathom 1/100,000th of a second. I've also, just to prove it wasn't fluky, I've had 404, a 407, and a 408, which are crazy. And they've all been at different tracks. So I've had 2 in Santa Pod, England, and 2 in a track in Germany. So I haven't yet seen someone else that's done 4 zeros in qualifying or stuff like that. But, it's something I really want to get again, just to like have on my ways to get 5 times. But
That's amazing.
yeah. Yeah.
So good. I know my swimming reaction times are awful.
one of the main things that helped me like win a lot of the time was just being so far ahead of the other person on the start line.
You mentioned that you got into it because of your sister and you followed
Yeah,
along
yeah.
the drag racing. Is there a moment that you knew like this is my sport and it's not just I'm following my older sibling?
Oh yeah, yeah. So one thing with the racing was you kind of did feel like, oh, this is me following my sister, this is me doing that. But then you kind of get to an age where like, you know what? Look around you. I played football, soccer. I played Gaelic football, which is an Irish sport. I played hurling, which is an Irish sport. I've done most sports, most martial arts, but nothing really ever gave me the same like kind of buzz that the race never did. And I think the social side of it also just kind of, you're just thinking to myself, especially last year, which is when that kind of moment where I was like, this is my sport came to me, especially when I was sat around all my friends, we are all just talking and you kind of just get that feeling where you're like, this is where you want to be and this is where you want to stay kind of thing. And you get good moments in other sports, but I think when you find your sport that you do like love and you enjoy every moment of it, it kind of has that like deeper feeling to it. And it's kind of like a real special moment when you kind of finally realize I'm not just following my sister or my sister. I'm not trying to just beat what she had a legacy of. I'm trying to create my own kind of thing. But yeah, it's definitely to do with like my social side.
I think I like asking that question because the answer is so different for everyone. And
Yeah.
there is always that moment. And like,
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most magical, not magical, but special things. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm not doing this because my parents told me to or because I'm following my sister. It's like, no, this
Yeah.
is what I actually want to do.
Yeah.
Last year, you spoke about it was a big year. You kind of took it to the next level. What
Yeah.
were the significant milestones in your journey? Let's go into those points in time.
Yeah. So my main ones were, oh, the main achievements of last year, just to like give a brief thing before I go into the story side of it, was I won the British Championship, which is the Europeans' main championship. I also competed in Scandinavia. I went to Norway and Sweden, taking both event wins, which was crazy for like a non-Scandinavian to do so. And I think I was the first in nearly like 10 years to do so in the junior classes. And then I was racing in Germany, France, and Holland or Netherlands. I was just being able to experience these like different ones, like different championships, different people, different cultures. It was like crazy. But anyway, the milestones that I would like say that were most important to me were definitely the British Championship. Having my sister being someone who previously won it and being the first Irish person, I kind of wanted to follow again, as I said, just match her. So I done that last year and I'm hoping to do it again this year just to one up her. I think one thing that was kind of outside the box that you kind of not many people think of was the traveling to then go on to win the German championship, which I done last year. They were like these moments where you're up in Scandinavia competing against some of the best up there. Then you're in Germany competing against them, all just to add together to make your best 5 events for the German championship. It was just a crazy moment to finally say, I'm actually a multi-European champion in like different countries, different places. And you kind of sit back and you like look at your achievements and you say, I've done this and no one else has ever done this before. And no one else has traveled that much just in one year. I think my dad racked up, what was it, 36, no, I don't know, it was 36,000 kilometers last year, just traveling around Europe. He was gone 7 months. He was just driving non-stop. His car has less value in it, as you would say, but he didn't mind. We had his car on my dragster, which is the car I drive, on top of my dad's Skoda, and that's how he transported everywhere. So we had the chassis and body on top of his sedan, and he had his engine in the boot of his sedan. I was sat in the back with all the suitcases and all the blankets covering me, and my mom and dad sat in the front, obviously, just going around, and it was honestly, it was an achievement in its own. It was a milestone in its own, being able to survive in that car for so long. but we made some of the best memories, and I'll never forget what I achieved or what we experienced in these different places.
So were you gone for 7 months last year?
So personally, I wasn't. I was in school. I had to still have school and stuff like that, but once school was done, I was over there straight away with my dad. Kind of, I think he was very lonely because my mum was working here to obviously fund it. And obviously once he was over there, he was staying with family friends. He wasn't just alone. He was staying with like family friends from different races, like that we knew. It was just like that kind of, I would be done school and I would be straight over there. And I was away all the summer last year. I was gone 3 months. I was even missed, I think, like nearly a month of my last year of fourth year, which in Ireland, fourth year is kind of like transition year into your higher education. So it wasn't that important, like for grades wise or anything. So they were understood that what I was doing. So they allowed me that time off and that leniency. But up until then, I had 100% like attendance. I never was sick, never anything. So they kind of allowed for that. The schools, I had to thank a lot for that. My parents, I had to thank a lot for that. And it's beyond the winning itself of trophies and stuff like that. Achievement that we achieved last year was the feeling of anyone can win it, because my parents slept on our couch downstairs, rented out bedrooms in our house with students of exchange students so I can go racing. I currently have students staying with me so I can fund next year's racing. We come from no big sponsorship, no money. We had no sponsors. We done it all ourselves. Even on my sleeve and my shirt, all I have is a young girl that died racing in Australia. And then on this side, it's literally my local bank that gave me like €100 2 years ago. So there's no like great financial support within my racing, but kind of the achievements of what we done with so little is just a lot more than the championships was, if that makes sense.
Hugely. I think it's a massive thing, especially motorsport. You know, you do need a little bit of
Yeah,
funding behind you to be able to compete, but to be able to do that by yourself without major sponsors,
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
huge.
It was just kind of more like the sacrifice you make kind of to get what you want to achieve was like so important to us that we like kind of were okay with it. We slept in tents. We were sleeping in a tent in Norway in a thunderstorm of their worst in like 10 years in a forest. So that was the most scariest night of my life. The water going all over me, the lightning outside, waking up the next morning having to race. Won the event. I don't know how we done it, but we were just thankful we survived the night, let alone actually race the next day. So
Amazing. That I almost can't fathom like traveling around Europe in a
yeah,
tent and a car and having your racing car up above the car.
yeah.
What were other teams like? What did other teams have? Like, what were the other competitors
So,
traveling?
so a lot of the teams, which is really funny, they had the generic motorsport people. Like they had the $100,000 trailers that have the kitchens, bathrooms, sleeping quarters, TVs, and you come over to our pits and we have a tent with the biggest Irish flag you could find anywhere put on the front. You have to kind of move it out of the way when you want to get out of the tent because my mom is very patriotic. And inside that tent, we had 2 rooms for bedrooms, and then we had a living quarters in the middle, which was like, I'm saying, not that big. And we had table, mini gas cooker, and we had probably music playing half the time just to kind of drown out the like rain or the whatever it may be on the day.
That's amazing though. Like I grew up camping with my parents, and I'm just thinking like at 17 or 16, like those late teenage years, I
Mm,
definitely would not have wanted to be in such a close environment with them.
yeah.
That's really awesome that you were, doing that for 3 months and that your parents were there supporting you.
Hmm. Don't get me wrong. We got on each other's nerves more than anything. Like I was the average teenager getting like annoyed when it was early morning racing or if it's late night driving. I'm like, Dad, we just pull over. I want to go to sleep. And he's like, oh no, we're nearly to this certain spot. He wants to be certain places at certain times and stuff like that. Bear in mind, he was driving at about 80 kilometers for majority of our travel because we did have a car on our roof. So I was just calling him my granddad the whole time. He was just slowly kicking along and it was we could have been there so much quicker if we were a normal weighted car that wasn't on the back hinge like a old muscle car. We done what we done what we wanted to do, and we done it with the most style possible, so you can't really complain.
I think it's fantastic. If you were to go back and relive a moment, what would it be?
The thing is, with like the last year, I've had so many like little funny moments. I've had so many amazing moments that are like kind of, I'd love to do it again. But of course, like the main one that comes to mind when you think about last year was that like childhood dream of winning the championship in England, which is considered the greater one in kind of Europe with the most competitors, stuff like that. That feeling once I got out of the car at the top of the track, pulled around, I had to wait for the car behind me, who was the other person who was second place in the championship. If he won, we go to the next round. We had to see who would take home the championship. And if he lost, I won the championship. But for me, it was the person that I was racing against for this championship was my childhood best friend, who we grew up together. We were doing everything together. But that person actually turned out to not speak to me for a lot of that year because he was kind of real competitive about the year, and his family were like convincing him not to speak to me. So what we ended up having the three best mates. So me, my other really close mate still, and the other guy who used to be my best mate who was second place in the championship. Them two were racing each other. So I had my two best mates racing each other. If my old best mate won, we were fighting out for the championship. If my other best mate won, I had won the championship and he'd won it for me. And I'd owed everything to him up until like for that event anyway. But turns out he came down the strip and I ended up winning the championship. And that moment when he put his hands out the car like that, you've done it. It was just like a moment where all that worry and stress of losing your like really close friend, of fighting for a championship for the whole year, for traveling, for all this, just for this moment, it just all drains out of you. I think I'm not ashamed to say I definitely shed a few tears just in that moment. Just a lot of people wouldn't say, "Oh yeah, I was just celebrating." No, I was first thing I thought about was crying. I just let everything out, and I had my best mate congratulating me, and I was just thanking him so much. And I had the other guy who went out. I went over straight away, and I said that was the best year of racing, the most competitive year of racing I've ever had. I'm thankful for him. Didn't get many words back from him, but of course, like you're gonna be like upset like, about the year and the kind of all his efforts, like just for a second. So I understood that, and luckily we kind of rebuilt that friendship. So that was great. That was good. But I think that main moment where you're like feeling that like I've done this, I've finally achieved it. It was just unbelievable and it was unmatched. Like that moment I could relive always. And the feeling when I got back to the pits of like where I was staying, where all the younger kids who have been looking up to me for the year and like who have been supporting, who I've been playing rugby with, who I've been playing soccer with, I was always involved with the younger ones. They came rushing over, all hugging me. My girlfriend came running down, hugging me. Everyone, just that whole feeling of a kind of unity where it wasn't just me who was feeling this joy, it was everyone around me. It was just kind of, you think this is what sport should be, and this is what like competitiveness should be put to the side at times, and this is like the main reason. But yeah, no, that like togetherness is unmatched, and I love to just have that feeling once again. And hopefully again it's this year, but hopefully less tears.
I think you might have a few more moments like that
Yeah.
in your sporting journey, but also it does transfer over, which I really, really like, because my next question is, what is the benefits that sports provided you that's transferred over to other parts of your life? I'd really like to know how that's influenced you as a person.
I'd definitely say the main one was like the socializing side, like the building up the friendships, learning how to socialize from at 8 years old. It's very important to like know how to talk to people, especially like people you're going to be spending weeks on weeks in that year with. Like you have to be able to speak with them, be able to like not fight, to understand each other, to not like get mad and fall out for the whole time. I think the main thing I would take from racing itself is how much you can build bonds from just like small things. You can build like personal bonds, you can build financial bonds with like different people that you can meet on the way. And I think these little things, like just talking to people at the track, playing sports with these people, they can all lead to like greater things. Like you can earn sponsorships from these people, you can earn lifelong friendships. And it's just very important that you can take that and bring it into the outside world and just have like the ability for, as we're speaking now, me being able to speak to you, being able to put myself out there, put myself in an uncomfortable position and be able to just build on that and just be able to express myself fully.
I think you've answered that very well. And I was actually going to say, you are expressing yourself absolutely fantastic, especially you're 17.
Yeah, 17.
For a 17-year-old, as a 17-year-old, I definitely couldn't do this.
Yeah. I think I had a bit of experience with like, I do a lot of the speaking when it comes to the racing. I like to help out a lot of the younger kids because I know when I was younger, it's very clicky in racing. That's one thing with the racing. They can be very clicky and you can't get into these other groups and I want to be in that group because they have the cooler bicycles, they have the nicer cars, they have this, they have, when you're younger. So I always try, if I see a kid that's at the racing, I'm like, oh, pass the ball or something like that. We just getting them slowly involved with like other kids around them. And I think that really builds into like a greater community along the line because they want to come back because they made new friends. They made 3 new friends and then they come back and now they have 5, they have 6. And you see now we've kind of built a whole foundation of like a community rather than cliques. And it's amazing. And I'll talk about that later about like the projects and stuff like that that my parents have set up and stuff like that. But within our racing, it's becoming so much more of like family orientated than it is kind of cliques and like groups and stuff like that.
Which is, like you said earlier, like that is what sport should be.
Yeah.
It should be that community and support network and, you know, family orientation. Like I love that. That's what you that's what your focus is.
Yeah. I think it's just so important for, especially for motorsport where it's like seen as this like kind of dangerous, but like exciting and like only for people that have money. And you think with money comes this like arrogance, which a lot of the time it doesn't. They're the nicest people you can meet. And it's just down to how they're brought up rather than how much money they have in the bank. And I think that's mainly very important, especially now, like understanding where they come from, stuff like that.
Is there a lesson that you've learned along the way that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So the main lesson was learning about how different people react to different situations and also how you can't let one like factor affect another, which would be the competitive side and kind of the friendships and stuff like that. You can't really let them affect one another. I think once I'm in the car seat, nothing else matters. They're still my friend, but I'm only thinking about that race at hand. Whereas a lot of other kids and stuff like that, especially even the older ones, they see it as a win is a win. You need to do these toxic things to win, or you need to sabotage. And you see you see them quite frequently nowadays. And it's kind of like, where's this coming from? Why are you being so like antisocial and being so, I need to win just because I want to impress my parents, my grandparents, my such and such. And I don't really care about the friendship side of it. Whereas for me, it's very much so, I would love to win. I'm not saying who doesn't like winning, but the thing is, you need to understand that there's 2 sides to everything. You need to understand that you're affecting other people. If you're messing with other people's parts, that's where it comes into the part where you're like, oh, this is a bit dodgy. My dad, for example, we counted last event, 14 people came to him over a 2-day period of just for parts. So they could come for carburetor parts. Someone had my spare engine last year in his car for the last event. The second place in the championship lost his brakes in the 3rd round, and he didn't have the part. He would have had to get sent from America. He would have been out. My dad, knowing he was in second place, said, "We're the better people. Give him the part down." So I brought down the part, put it in their hand, and the rest was, we didn't mind after that. We were like, you can't let this competitiveness get in the way of like your deeper morals and say like, this is the better thing to do. I need to be the better person. And even if they're not the nicest person to you, it doesn't matter. You need to have these deeper morals and say like your reputation comes first and then competitive comes second.
Did that come from your parents? It sounds like it's come from your parents.
Yeah, very much so. My parents are very like, especially with my mom, especially she has little projects going, but we'll speak about that later. So it's all good.
You can speak now about it. What projects is your mum doing?
Oh yeah, perfect. So basically my mom has these little events every year. She has main ones are Easter, which just went by. We had the Easter event. It was called the Easter Nationals, and my mom had an Easter egg hunt for all the kids to get involved. So she spent, I think, 300 or 400 euro on different things for the kids to do. We ended up not even using half of them. She had a bunny suit. She had a carrot suit. She had little Easter eggs that me and the older ones hid around for the younger ones to go looking for. She had an egg and spoon race. And for her, this was what she loved to do. But also what we see it as is a time in which everyone can come together and forget about the racing and not stress about the competitiveness of it and the high heart rates. And it's kind of like a cool down just before the eliminations. And you see with the younger ones, it really helps. They open up so much more. They're playing together. Everyone's involved. And you just see so many maybe different types of people. Like they have different upbringings, but they all come together in this one time and they're all enjoying themselves. And then again, as we said, the community vibe, it's so much stronger and it's so much like heavier built during this time than it is throughout the rest of the season. And then another time we have, which my mom is called like the Junior Dragster like awards, she calls it. She made a separate awards at the end of the year for every single kid to get an award because she sees it as some people say, oh, it's the participation awards, but it's not really. She basically buys a cup for every single person that raced that year, and she goes through with a group of people and lists out who deserves what trophy, who's been the best reaction time, who's been the most enthusiastic, who's been the best sports person, the best sportswoman, sportsman, because there's all different types of people and all different incredible talents they have. Some people are crazy at the reaction times, and we have trophies for the best reaction time in the JS, which is the youngest. Then you have the JM, which is the medium, and then JMA, which is the oldest. But the thing with my type of racing is we all race together. So I could race an 8-year-old tomorrow morning and people be like, oh, that's unfair. But then you also think I'm sat on the line for about 7-8 seconds waiting for that car to slowly tick her down the track so now I can chase after it. So my reaction times does take a bit of a bang from that. But the thing with that is every person leaves there with a smile on their face saying, look, I won this. Look, I won that. I'm coming home with a trophy. They may never win a trophy from the actual races. They may only win from these. And we also have perpetual rewards that she introduced for 2 people that passed away and 2 people that are currently like still important people in the racing like scene for us. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a little girl and she's actually from Australia, and she was, I think, one of the first ever recorded deaths from an accident in the like junior classes. And she was only an 8-year-old girl who only just started in Australia, and her whole family was in the racing. And it was all down to a like bad decision from the top end workers who told her to turn off when she was going too quick. It was a very sad time, but we decided, because my mom was close with the family, she said, we'll make a nice gesture on our tops and we'll also introduce a trophy that a young driver who is like from the ages of 8 to 10, who shows real like talent and like potential, that they would win this trophy. And you should see the size of these trophies. One of them is, I'm 6'2", and one of these trophies is above hip height. And I'm like, Mom, you're so overkill. And she's just like, she wants the best trophies for them kids. But I'm like, how are you meant to bring it home? I ended up winning the the group one, which all the kids voted for. Like, it's like the overall winner of the year. I won it last year, and me bringing it home on a Ryanair flight, it had to have its own seatbelt. That's how big it was. It was bigger than the seat. It had to be put on the floor and strapped in. It was crazy, but she does little things like that, that she tries to make a nice image for the kids to move on to and like look back on and say, oh, I won this, I won that. Bring it to school, bring it to show and tell for the younger ones and say, this is what I done this week. This is what I won. Just stuff like that, just to like show that they're not just doing it for no reason. Like, they have like a purpose, and that it's like encouraging them to stay in the sport and like find what class may best suit them next, what they want to go on to next. If they're good at reaction times, what they might do at that. If they're good at dial-ins or being accurate on their times, maybe they'll go into a class that's more based on that. Maybe it's just reaction times, they'll go into one that's first to the finish line and the fastest car wins. You never know. But these kids always like have this feeling that they accomplished something and now they can push on to get something better in the future. So I think that's really important for the younger kids, especially.
Definitely. And that, I guess, transitions into our next question, which is, where do you see the future of sport? I know your mum and, you know, your team is working towards creating a nice community feel to that, but where do you see where the future of your sport is?
For me personally, I definitely see, like, with the drag racing side, I definitely see that we need to push more towards getting more modern. It's very old fashioned. It's show up to races, very limited broadcasts. It's put on YouTube, promoted a tiny bit, stuff like that. But I think they need to get someone behind it that's very media focused, which they are starting to do in America, and just blow it up a lot more. Maybe get, as they did in the 80s where they had it on TV, if they get it back on TV, just to get like more viewers, more people that wouldn't have access to being able to go onto YouTube searching for this specific thing. Maybe it's just on a random channel that they end up flicking onto and they're like, oh, I'm interested in this. It's kind of branching into the media, and maybe like obviously down the line getting onto TV. I think that's very important for all sports. Everything having that like basis of really good promotion is really important. But for, I know myself, it is very hard, like trying to promote yourself. I went from sending out 300 plus emails, getting maybe 2 replies back, about maybe even 4 replies back, and 3 of them being no's. You kind of have to just keep pushing at these things until they flourish. And I think that's what they need to focus on. If it goes wrong, maybe if they don't get the views they want, if they don't get the promo that they want, I think they need to just keep on going. And I see even with sport in general, with another topic that I want to touch on quickly is the fitness side of it. As a lot of people know nowadays, there's a huge boom in fitness and getting young people who are starting the gym. If you look on things like TikTok and YouTube Shorts, everyone's starting gym related videos and gym related everything, which is amazing. And for me personally, I've started training more specific towards my sport, which is very limited. It's very mental, and it's a lot of training your reaction times, your mental capabilities of keeping cool under pressure. There's not much physical to it other than brakes, throttles, stuff like that, but the mental side is the real killer. And I know if you have a strong mental and you have a strong body, it's really important. They kind of go 2 and 2 together. It's really important to kind of like build both of them up at the same time and not just focus on building up a really strong physique and forgetting about your mental health. So I know with a lot of young racers, it is really, really like dampering on them when they feel all that pressure then toppling on top of them, and they don't realize. Then they have school on top of on top of that, and they have like little other things. But definitely, I think building up a strong like fitness within yourself, and also like a strong mental health, is really important for like sport. Just going forward, and like maybe capitalizing on the kids that are starting these gym TikToks and stuff like that. Maybe pushing them towards training specifically towards what they want to do. If they want to do football, maybe it's plyometrics for explosiveness. If it's racing, they can focus on meditation, or they can focus on like little things to just help their mental cool down and relax and stuff like that. But I think a lot of kids definitely need to understand that it's amazing to have this new fitness like boom, but they also have to realize what they're doing it for and how they can use it to benefit themselves and not just do it because everyone else is doing it. If that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, it definitely makes sense. It's using that mental and physical fitness and directing it towards your specific sport.
Yeah.
Now, I have a few quick fire questions.
Perfect. No worries.
Are you ready? See if you can answer them in one or two words.
No worries.
What is your ETPB?
ETPB. My best time was definitely, it's a bit naughty because you're not really allowed to go faster than 790, but I went 770 or 765 when I was in America, which it was a test day. It was allowed. You could go as fast as you like. I had no weight in the car. I kind of just went as fast as I could. But yeah, it was definitely 7.65 seconds. And that's, my car goes 0 to 60 mile an hour in 2.4 seconds. So you can imagine that was quite fast. A lot of people kind of laugh because they're like, "Oh, you're only limited to 90 mile an hour." But then again, I'm telling them that my car accelerates faster than a Tesla, Lamborghini, a lot of these other cars. Like I've smoked, I've smoked a lot of bigger, like kind of fancy cars on test days where they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll race you, I'll go against you." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, come on, race to the 8th mile," which we normally race to, and I would beat them there by like 2 seconds, and they're like kind of looking at you like, "How have you just done that?" But it's really important just fathom that the ET for our ETs, you're gonna have to have a quick get going speed to like kind of reach them.
We've just had the F1 2 weeks ago in Melbourne. So how does that compare to the speed of an F1 car? I know Daniel Ricciardo is a big deal down here, and
Okay, so yeah, no worries. So I'll explain for my cars. We are nowhere near. We're like 3 times slower. But my sister went on to do a thing called Top Fuel. So Top Fuel is the fastest of fast in drag racing. It's like the top of the top. So they go up to 300 mile an hour in America. My sister went 266 mile an hour, which you would see some F1 cars going. But she was 0 to 100 mile an hour in point 0.8 of a second. So I think with drag racing, you are going to these speeds that the F1 cars do get to, but you're getting to them in seconds. You're getting there like 1, 2 seconds. You're going to 200 mile an hour. Whereas these F1 cars need aerodynamics. That's why they have so much downforce, and that's why getting up to these speeds is slower, but they can keep at that speed and use it during turns, deceleration, and their strength is unbelievable. As we're touching on fitness, they have this best fitness. No one kind of thinks about it. Their fitness is the top of the top. They have the best neck strengths, body tensions, everything. So it's for speed wise, we do kind of beat them on that. But when it comes to fitness, we have nowhere touching them on their fitness side. They have unbelievable fitness.
thank you for comparing them. It's really it's an interesting thing to compare different elements of motorsports and what the different strengths are for different sports.
Yeah.
Now you're 17. Do you have your general driver's license yet? Like
I'm allowed my driver's license, but I'm actually very lazy and I have not got it yet. So my dad is very on my tail and he is saying, "Well, why don't you get your license?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I will." But then I'm like, "Oh, race season now, I can't get it." And he's like, you're just being lazy. Like I don't want to study all the extra bits you have, like the theory, and then the driving side of it will be fine. Like I've known how to drive since I was probably about 10. My dad's had me in his car driving, just saying. He kind of threw me in the car and just said, "Go ahead." And kind of like most dads, like most to kind of just give it a go, see how bad you can make it, and then I'll kind of guide you from there. And then, yeah, it was kind of, I think he had me up in like a car park doing it a few times. And so I have a rough idea. I know how to use a clutch, everything's fine. I know all that stuff, but it's just more the theory side of whether or not to go on a pedestrian crossing. I have no clue. I just wouldn't be able to tell you. So that's where I'm kind of need to do my bit of research and stuff like that. There's no crossing that my drag strip, so I don't really know too
Drag
well.
track, is it?
Exactly.
I just found that so interesting that you're able to drive such a high speed, high power vehicle, and then like you're not driving on the road.
Yeah.
Like it's old enough too, but yeah, it's just
I'm just not doing it at the moment. The Irish association, like the driving license, they don't actually allow me to drive because of they didn't give me a racing license because they didn't recognize drag racing because I'm literally the only one that does it at the moment in Ireland. Whereas in England and the rest of Europe, it's huge, but they didn't want to recognize it. So I actually had to go to FIA and get a full license from FIA, and they actually sent me out too high of a license. I could be sat in an F2, F3 car if I want right now with the type of license I have. Don't tell the FIA because they will take that away from me. But if I wanted to, I could step into an F3 car right now. So that's really cool. I can't drive a road car, but I can drive two steps down from an F1 car. So I'm not complaining.
your version's a lot more fun. I can tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have you had any accidents?
No, I've never had like an accident where I've crashed or anything, but I've definitely seen kids roll their car. I've seen people crash into one another. I've seen kind of like the maddest stuff. I've seen like cars actually take flight. Thank God not our cars because they're not fast enough, but the top fuels have literally left the floor and done barrel rolls in the air. They're that fast because you have to think about it. They're built like speeds of planes, and at a certain point, a wing is going to want to take flight. And since this car is built like a wing, a reverse of a wing, instead of taking flight, it wants to reorientate it to a wing because it is grabbed. I don't know the wind. I don't know the exact thing, but my dad definitely talked about it a lot of times. That it's kind of in my head where it wants to go 180 and turn itself into a wing, and that's why it ends up flying up, getting caught by the air, flying up, doing flips and landing wherever. And it's crazy when you do see it, but yeah, thank God it hasn't happened in a good few years. They've kind of learned how to weigh it down, stuff like that.
Yeah, that would
So,
be scary. So what is next for you? You mentioned that you want to have another crack at the English Championship. What's next for your journey in sport?
so definitely the next step for me would be go on to the either top fuel, which is the one I was talking about, or the more like door car side of it. So like a kind of like a road car, but like really, really tuned and like done up, and it's like the proper drag car, as you would say. I like the more that side of it, the more door car side of it. That's like more of a realistic feel to it. Because number one, it's a bit slower, and number two, it's like I don't know the like exact reason why. It's just a feeling since I was a kid. I always wanted to do the kind of more door car. Maybe it's because I don't want to follow my sister that much, and I want to follow exact route and go the exact same way. But yeah, I definitely want to give it a go at that. But you'd need a lot of sponsorship for that, so that's what I'm aiming for. I have to get a big name over here, so hopefully one day.
So where can the audience find you? I know there's a lot of listeners in America as well as Australia. Where can they find you and follow your journey?
So my main places that I'm on is Instagram. So I have an Instagram, and I'm also starting up a Facebook properly. It would be for Facebook, Lee McDonald, and it's with my car, has everything on it. But it's a bit easier on Instagram. It's mcdonald.motorsport. I'm the first option that comes up most of the time. It's I just open my car. So it's a long, skinny car that looks a bit like a canoe from first sight. So that's what you'd be looking for. But yeah, it's definitely like something I really need to work on is my social like promotion, and I have grown it recently quite a lot. I've grown 600 followers in like the space of I think 4 weeks of just promoting and promoting and promoting. So it's been quite good.
That's amazing. And I'll be sure to link it in our socials as well so people can easily find it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thanks so much for having me on as well. It's been amazing.
So thank you for coming on. And I know it's a little bit of a later night for you. So thank you so much for staying alert and awake. I know if it was that time for me, I'd be asleep.
No worries.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond Sport with Fiona Stewart. This is a completely independent podcast that has been created to share the journey and lessons of top-level sporting professionals, but also your everyday lover of sport. If you liked this podcast, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a review and share it with someone who you think would also enjoy it. Until next time.